بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافئ مزيده يا ربنا لك الحمد كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك ولعظيم سلطانك سبحانك يا مولانا لا نحصي ثناء عليك أنت كما أثنيت على نفسك اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في الأولين وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في الآخرين وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في الملأ الأعلى إلى يوم الدين وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد حتى ترث الأرض ومن عليها وأنت خير الوارثين وبعد. We now move on to Hadith number 7. We're going through the collection of Imam Nawawi rahimahullah Arba'een, 40 Hadith, which he gathered together to benefit us, to help us to understand the most important parts of our religion. Each one of these hadith that he's listed out, each one of these hadith are principles of our religion. The cornerstones, the foundations of our religion. And so this hadith number 7, a hadith which looks at sincere advice towards different types of people, towards different ones, and the idea of nasiha, the sincere advice, being a cornerstone, a pillar of our religion. First read the hadith in Arabic and then in English, and then we look at some of the meanings of the hadith. The hadith, Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah records and relates عن أبي رقية تميم بن أوس الداري رضي الله عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال الدين النصيحة قلنا لمن؟ قال لله ولكتابه ولرسوله ولأئمة المسلمين وعامتهم رواه مسلم. The translation of the hadith, Abu Ruqayyah, Tamim ibn Aws al-Dari radiallahu anhu mentioned that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, religion is sincere advice. We said, to whom? He sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, to Allah, His book, His messenger, to the leaders of the Muslims and their generality, the general people. Muslim recorded this hadith. In this hadith, advice, sincere advice to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the Quran, to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to the leaders of the Muslims and to the general Muslims. And we're going to look at what's the meaning of this advice. How do you advise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It's impossible. But what's the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mean, or the way we understand advice? It's impossible to advise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there's a different meaning when we talk about advice to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, advice to the Quran, advice to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the way we understand it, what's required of us in terms of speaking to the leaders of Muslims and also just general people. The last one, general people. What's the etiquette when we advise people? That's what this hadith is going to look at. The first thing, before looking at the lessons of the hadith and the importance of the hadith, we should try and always look at the Sahabi, the narrator who narrates the hadith. The Sahabi who narrates the hadith. Because bear in mind, in this hadith, or in all of these hadith, Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah does not mention his chain. Because Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah will have a chain of transmission going back to the Prophet ﷺ in every single one of these hadith. But he doesn't want to give chains of transmission. He doesn't want to tell you everybody between him and the Sahabi back to the Prophet ﷺ. Because that's really for ulama. It's really for scholars to get into a discussion about the narrators in the hadith. But he mentions the Sahabi. In all of these, he mentions the Sahabi. And the madar, the most important within these are Sahaba. The most important within these are Sahaba. And we want to know about these companions. We need to know about these companions because he sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us that my companions are like stars. My companions are like stars. Any of them that you take as guides, you will be guided. Any of them that you'll take as guides, you will be guided. Any of them that you follow, you'll be guided. And just think about stars, that when you're walking on a dark night and you don't have any lights out there, you look up and you see shining stars. That's how the Sahaba, that's how we should think of the companions, shining stars. And in olden times when they used to look at the sky to figure out directions about how to get somewhere, they would follow the direction based upon the star and they'll get to their destination, they'll get to where they're going to. That's how we should look at the companions. That's how the Prophet ﷺ told us to look at companions. They are stars who shine with the light of the Prophet ﷺ. They shine with that light of the Prophet. They took directly the most intense light from the Prophet. The further on it goes, it gets dimmer and dimmer because you're further away from the source. Although the light of the Prophet will always shine. but it's the people in between who block the light. The further and further you go away, it's the people in between who block the light. His light is bright. That light will never dim. Those who took it directly, it shone the brightest through them. It shone the brightest through them. So if you looked at Abu Bakr, you're going to see Prophet ﷺ. You're going to see Prophet ﷺ. If you look at Umar, you're going to see the Prophet ﷺ. You're going to see the effect of the light of the Prophet ﷺ on these people who were crafted and shaped and made into human beings by the Prophet ﷺ. Every single one of them without exception. From the greatest to the least of them, they're all stars of guidance for us. So this Sahabi, his name is Tamim ibn Aws al-Dari, Abu Ruqayya. He has one daughter, or he has a daughter. He doesn't have any sons. He has a daughter whose name is Ruqayya, and he's named after her, Abu Ruqayya. He becomes Muslim very late. He was originally a Christian. Who becomes Muslim very late, in the ninth year after Hijrah. So it's very late. This is only a year before the Prophet ﷺ passes away. But he has a sha'an, he has a great rank. And this one special hadith that he narrates that gives him a special rank. But this Sahabi, Tamim ibn Aws al-Dari, we should learn their names because these are our guides to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was known as an abid. He was known as somebody who's devout in his worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not just practicing, but he used to spend the night in standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He used to recite Quran all the time. And he's one of those individuals that are recorded who in one rak'ah would finish the whole of the Quran. In one rak'ah he would do a khatam of the Quran. And although there are still people who do that, it's rare, but there are still people who do that. But he was one of them from the generation of the Prophet ﷺ. Another one of the greats who did that was Sayyidina Uthman ibn Affan. Sayyidina Uthman stood in one whole rak'ah from beginning to end. He finishes the whole Quran. Abu Hanifa from the later generations is known to have done that. Abu Hanifa was known to be somebody who does khatm of the Quran within one rak'ah. Sayyidina Tamim al-Dari is one of those individuals, finishes the whole Quran beginning to end in one rak'ah of prayer. But at the same time, he also was known to do the opposite, which is what? The whole night just repeating one ayah of the Quran. One ayah of the Quran. And we know that from the Prophet ﷺ, because that behavior with the Quran is prophetic in nature. There were nights when the Prophet would read large portions of the Quran. Large portions of the Quran. He wouldn't do khatm of the Quran in one night, and there's wisdoms behind that. Because if he does that, he sets the bar too high for us. If he ﷺ did khatm of the Quran every night, we're going to have to do it. Because he's for us. He's for not just Ahlullah Ta'ala, not just for the highest of people. He's there for the lowest of people. So he ﷺ sets a bar. And even that bar is still high. Even Sahaba struggle to stand next to him and keep up with the prayer of the Prophet ﷺ. But there were nights when the Prophet ﷺ read large chunks of the Quran, portions of the Quran. But we also have recorded nights where the Prophet ﷺ just repeat the whole one ayah just throughout the whole of the night. We have that recorded in Hadith. And Sayyidina Tamim al-Dari would do the same thing. He took his guidance from the Prophet. That's the light that we're saying shining through him. But bear in mind, he's only Muslim with the Prophet 1 year. 1 year. And that's the nature of the prophetic guidance. Like the nature of Nur al-Nubuwwah, the light of prophecy. So you and I, when we decide now to start practicing our deen, or somebody converts and becomes a Muslim, it takes us a while to get somewhere. It takes us a while. People don't change instantly. They changed instantly. What's the difference? Because of who they were exposed to, who they took the guidance from. They took it directly from the source. Sayyidina Tamim al-Dari, from being a Christian, he becomes Muslim. Within that year with the Prophet ﷺ, now he's gone on to another plane of existence. Now he takes the guidance of the Prophet ﷺ, he's finishing the Quran in one night. He's repeating one ayah throughout the whole of the night. What you do when you repeat one ayah? What's the Prophet ﷺ do when he's repeating one ayah? Because we'd get bored after a few times repeating it. But what are they doing? Tadabbur ma'an al-Quran. The greatest relation with the Quran is that you repeat it to understand it. To reflect over it, to take meanings out of it. The Quran is a book whose meanings will never come to an end. And the real people of Allah subhanahu will never get tired of reading Quran. Will never get tired of reading. The nufus, tayyibah, tahira, purified souls will never get tired of Quran. They will get tired of talking to you and I. They will get tired of people, but not of the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's a damning indictment against us that we get bored of reading the Quran and we're happy to sit around talking all day long with each other. We're happy with kalamun nas, but kalamullahi ta'ala we get bored quickly. We're happy to talk all day long with each other. What satisfies us is talking to each other, human speech. Kalamullahi ta'ala, divine speech, we get bored of it quickly. There's something wrong with our nufus. There's something wrong. And especially now because we're moving into Shahr al-Quran. We're less than 2 months away from the month of the Quran. We really need to think about that relationship. Sayyidina Tamim ad-Dari is giving us some indication of that. And when they're doing something like that, it brings it home slightly it brings it home to us. Because if you were to argue, if somebody could say, we can't do what the Prophet ﷺ did, we try and reach it, but he's the Prophet. He's beyond us. But Tamim ad-Dari is not a prophet. He's not a prophet. He's still Sahabi, so he's still a level beyond. But now we're moving from the realm of Ma'asum. We're moving from the infallible realm to the realm of those who are protected and guided. When we see now Sahaba who are not prophets doing it, there's more hope for us to be able to reach a level. There's more hope. It's now coming down to a level where we say they are still beyond us, but they're not prophets. So we have something that we can cling on to, which becomes a lot easier. Sayyidina Tamim ad-Dari, the point about that, or an additional point about that, is that their nights were with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we've spoken about that before. Their nights were with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The greatest moments in a day, in our existence, are in the nights that we sleep through. They were wide awake at that time. Sayyidina Tamim ad-Dari mentioned he had a thawb, a garment, a hulla, like a suit, what we would call a suit, 1,000 dinar. He bought it for 1,000 dinar. Just convert it like now, let's say like £1,000 you paid for a suit. What are you going to do with that suit? You're going to wear it for the most special occasions. Maybe for your wedding. And that's perhaps not, you're not going to spend that type of money in a suit for any other reason. For the most special occasions. He spent that to buy a suit, items of clothing. What did he use it for? To stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at night. The only reason he used it. He would stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at night. He understood that to be the special moments. His special moments were with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the point where the most expensive clothes that he wears, it's in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the depths of the night. That's somebody now who has wa'i fahm from the Prophet. He's understood this religion from the Prophet. So that's Sayyidina Tamim ad-Dari, a special companion, only 1 year with the Prophet. But see what happens to him within that 1 year. Some radical change that happens within Sayyidina Tamim ad-Dari. Sayyidina Tamim ad-Dari, in the science of Hadith, they have a category of Hadith that's called Riwayat al-Akabir an al-Asaghir. Normally in Hadith, it's somebody, the Shaykh that you take it from, usually you'd assume because he's the Shaykh and he's the one he came before you, he has a higher rank. Normally you'd assume that. Normally it'd be somebody older than you, you're a young student who will learn, younger, and you'll learn the Hadith from the Shaykh. But there are rare occasions where it's the other way around, where somebody of a higher rank will take a transmission from you and relay it. Sayyidina Tamim ad-Dari, in the books of Hadith, they'll mention Sayyidina Tamim ad-Dari, that the Prophet ﷺ took a transmission from him and relayed it to the people. He took a transmission and he relayed it to the people. Sayyidina Tamim ad-Dari, what made him become Muslim? An encounter that he had with the Dajjal. Sayyidina Tamim ad-Dari met the Dajjal. He met the Antichrist. And the Antichrist told him about the Prophet ﷺ. Sayyidina Tamim ad-Dari, the Prophet ﷺ is in Medina, he's in the masjid, he's on the minbar, or the Prophet, after a prayer, he gets onto the minbar, and the Prophet ﷺ, and after a prayer, he tells them all to gather together, and after the prayer, he tells them all, stay where you are, every one of them, and then he tells them, do you know why I've gathered you together? And they say, Allah and His Messenger know best. He said, I've not gathered you for any other reason except for to tell you about Tamim ad-Dari, who's present there, to tell you about Tamim ad-Dari. He said he was Nasrani, he was a Christian. And he's come to me, and he's become Muslim, and he's taken the Pledge of Allegiance. And he's told me a narration, a transmission, he's told me of an incident that matches up with what I've told you about the Masih ad-Dajjal, what I've told you about the Antichrist. He told me, this is now the proselytes I'm transmitting. From whom? From somebody lesser in rank than him, Tamim ad-Dari. He told me that he used to go out on the sea. He was a sailor, fisherman. He used to go out on the sea with his people, 30 of them. They went out. And what happened? The proselyte then relates, and we relate to what happens. He said it was the waves were powerful, and they were tossing the boat that they were on until they lost control of it. They go in a westerly direction, but they've lost control over it. And the winds take them on a month's journey, and eventually they come to an island. And when they get to the island, they get onto the island, and as they're wandering around the island, they come across this creature, a beast, who starts speaking to them. And they ask him, who are you? Right? A large creature covered in hair, a hairy creature. And they asked him, who are you? He said, I'm the Jassasa. And Jassas is a spy who watches over. And all he does, he says, I want you to take you to a man who's in this monastery on this island. Because he said, you'll be interested in what he's got to tell you. So they go in there. And when the Jassasa, when this creature describes the man, some fear enters into their hearts. And they were afraid that it was some type of devil that they were being taken to. But eventually, he leads them to this monastery. And inside of this monastery, they see this human being, large human being. But they said, we've never seen a human being as large as him. But he's tied, with his hands tied to his neck. And he can't move. He can't move from there. They asked him, who are you? Who are you? But he says, you know who I am. But he says, I'm more interested in you. Tell me, who are you? They say to him, we are Arabs. We were in our boat, and eventually we've ended up here. And the beast, this creature, has led us to you. Then this person asked them a number of questions, inquiries that he makes. He asked them about a place called Baysan. He said, are there palm trees at this place? Are the palm trees there, are they still producing dates? They said, yes. He said, soon there'll come a time when they will die and no dates will produce. He asked them, the Tigris Lake, a lake which is on the border now of Syria and Israel. He asked them about this lake. He said, is there water still there? They said, yes. He said, soon there'll come a time when there's no water there. Soon there'll come a time when there's... And he asked them more and more questions. But then he asked them the key question. He says, tell me about the prophet who's been sent to the uneducated people, the illiterate people. What's happened to him? They answered, he's left Mecca. He's gone to Yathrib. He wasn't Muslim, so Yathrib was a name for them. The Yathrib was named Medina before Islam. He's gone to Yathrib. This person asked him, have the Arabs fought against him? He said, yes. What's happened? What's happened? They said, he's become victorious against the Arabs who are around him. This is at the time when the Prophet ﷺ won, and they've obeyed him. This person now tells them, you should go back and obey him. You should go back and obey him. He said, I want to tell you who I am. I am the Masih. I am the Masih. Masih literally meaning the Christ, but he's the Antichrist. This is the Dajjal who's speaking to them. Now, he referred to himself as the Masih because one of the meanings of the Masih which is often just referred to as the Christ. Masah al-ard. Masah al-ard. Somebody who travels the earth, covers the earth, a fast. And he covers the earth a fast time. And that's the nature of the Antichrist. The Antichrist, he covers the surface of the earth a fast time. And then he tells him, the Antichrist now tells him, he said, soon I will receive permission to leave here. And I will cover the earth. And he said, there will not be a town on the face of the earth except that within 40 days I'll cover the whole of the earth. Every single town on the face of the earth, he said, except for Mecca and Tayyibah. Mecca and Tayyibah. Tayyibah being Medina. He said, these two have been forbidden for me to enter. So when I get there, he said, there will be angels. There will be angels surrounding it with swords unsheathed. I will not be able to enter. When he finished the proselyting, and he struck with the staff, he struck the minbar. He said, this is Tayyibah, this is Tayyibah, this is Tayyibah. This is Tayyibah, this is Tayyibah, this is Tayyibah. And he addressed all the companions, he said, have I not told you about this before? They said, yes, you've told us about this. So here this is an example of riwayat al-akabir an al-asakhir. The Prophet relays about the Dajjal, not because, and he'd already told them about all of this, and he'd received the knowledge from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about this. Why? Confirmation. What I'm telling you is exactly true. What I'm telling you is true. So this Sayyidina Tamim al-Dari is one of the few human beings who so far met the Dajjal. Who's met the Dajjal whilst he was chained in that monastery on the island before he will be released and before he will spread across the earth. After the Prophet ﷺ passed away, and after the Abu Bakr, Umar and Uthman, the killing of Sayyidina Uthman, when Sayyidina Uthman is murdered, Sayyidina Tamim al-Dari, he leaves Medina and he settles in Sham. And eventually he lives and he dies in Palestine. He lives and he dies in Palestine. And if ever you go to Palestine, he's buried in on the outskirts of Hebron. On the outskirts of Hebron, which is known as Medina al-Khalil, where Sayyidina Tamim al-Dari, rahimahullah wa radiyallahu anhu, is buried. So Sayyidina Tamim al-Dari, one of the great companions, even though just 1 year with the Prophet, but that's the nature of the Messenger. He changes people who come into his presence. In this hadith, because of his short period of time, he doesn't relate a lot of hadith. Only recorded from him 18 hadith. 18 hadith. There are al-mukthirina min al-hadith. There are Sahaba who narrate a vast number of hadith. Abu Hurairah, Sayyidah Aisha, Jabir ibn Abdullah. There are Sahaba who narrate large number of hadith. He has only a handful of hadith that he narrates. 18 hadith. And this is the only hadith that's recorded in Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim from Sayyidina Tamim al-Dari. But one of the most important hadith in our religion. One of the most important hadith in our religion. The importance of this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ was given Jawami' al-Kalam. Jawami' al-Kalam. He was given a gift by Allah subhanahu amongst the many gifts. أعطيناك الكوثر. We've given you al-Kawthar, al-Khair al-Kathir. The Prophet ﷺ was given so many gifts by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, unimaginable gifts that he received. But one of them, in a few words, he could say, he could convey meanings that would take anybody else. Vast number of words. We could stand here an hour and still not convey even a drop of what the Prophet ﷺ meant by that. In those handful, maybe no more than 10 words that he ﷺ said here. We could speak and speak and speak and speak and still we haven't got what he ﷺ said. And because the words that he was given is relaying to us what? From Bahr al-Wahi. It's from the ocean of revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inna alayna jam'ahu wa qur'anah فَإِذَا قَرَأْنَاهُ فَاتَّبِعْ قُرْآنَهُ ثُمَّ إِنَّ عَلَيْنَا بَيَانَهُ. The Qur'an, words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, reflecting eternal meanings with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the Prophet, we're going to give it to you. We're going to make you memorize this. And then what? Then we're going to make you understand this. The Prophet had understanding of everything about the Qur'an. And in a few words, he can give you meanings of the ocean of divine meanings, just in a few words. That's a gift that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him, that no other prophet, no other human being ever received. Just in a few words, he can convey meanings. And these words, what is nasiha? What is religion? That you be sincere to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the leaders of the Muslims and to the general Muslims. He's given you the whole cornerstone of your religion, ad-deenun nasiha. Even those who will study Arabic, when he says ad-deenu an-nasiha, religion is sincere advice and nothing other than that. Sincerity and nothing other than that. That's the whole essence of your religion. There's nothing more to your religion other than you be sincere to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Be sincere to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Be sincere to the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Be sincere to the leaders and to the general Muslims. That's the whole of your religion. If we could understand some of this and just hold on to it, we've got the whole of our religion. Even some of the ulama, as he mentions there, every aspect of our religion is just contained within his book. When he said, be sincere to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every aspect of our religion is contained within the Quran. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, مَا فَرَّطْنَا فِي الْكِتَابِ مِنْ شَيْءٍ. We've not left out anything in this book. We've not left out anything in this book. Every aspect of our religion, every aspect of our life, every aspect of our being just needs to connect to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we're willing to connect, our existence is sorted out. It just needs connection to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we can say that the whole of this religion revolves around this hadith. We have a number of hadith around which we say the whole of religion revolves around this. This is one of those hadith. All of our religion just revolves around this hadith. So what does it mean? What does it mean to be sincere to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Sincere advice, meaning being sincere to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have a number of points there. And we've spoken about this, so we don't need to spend too much time on this. Be sincere to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How? Iman billahi ta'ala. Believe in Him. Accept Him as your Lord. What does it mean to believe in Him? What does it mean to believe in Him? That in your heart, you have certainty that He is your Lord. And you know why you have that certainty. You know why you have that certainty. Why do you believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Not just you believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why do you believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? You have that certainty and conviction in your heart that He is Allah. There's no God except for Him. And I know why I believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Look around at all of existence. Everything in existence, including your own existence, tells you there has to be a creator. And you have absolute confidence. And once you break away from the mundane life that you live, and you stop for a moment, stop and thought, right? Who am I? Who am I? What am I about? What's my life about? Right? What brought me to where I am, and where am I going in my life? What's the end of my life? Ask these key questions about yourself. And then at the end of all of that reflection about yourself and your own existence, you must come to a conclusion that there's somebody who's brought you into existence. There's somebody who at any point can take you out of existence. There's somebody who at all moments maintains your existence. You have no existence except for by His existence. He's wajib al-wujud. You're jaiz al-wujud. He's wajib al-wujud. He must exist. You don't need to exist. And you only exist because He keeps you in existence. So believe in Him and have absolute certainty in Him subhanahu wa ta'ala and why you believe in Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you don't have any existence without His existence. And the only reason you exist is because of Him. And if any moment you think you don't need Him, kafara billahi ta'ala. Even just for a blinking of an eye, you think, I don't need God. I don't need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You've rejected your Lord. So just be in a constant state of certainty in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And all of His attributes. Learn His attributes. Study aqeedah. Learn aqeedah. Learn about the one who always has been, who always will be. Learn about the one, learn and understand the nature of the one who's completely different to everything in existence, who doesn't rely on anything in existence, and who's absolutely one in His nature. Learn about the one whose will is the only will that there is. And whatever He wills, He will carry out because He has the power to carry out whatever He wants. Learn about the one who's the only one who's truly alive. and rely upon the one who's living, who truly lives. Learn about the one whose knowledge is complete, such that he knew about everything about you before you ever existed. And he didn't need you to exist for him to know about you, whose knowledge is absolutely complete. Learn about the one who communicates with human beings. He speaks and he communicates to human beings, and he sees all, and he hears everything that you do, and nothing escapes him. Understand these sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Understand these essential attributes of God. You understand that, it will give you certainty in your belief. What you study in Aqidah, if you understand these in a proper manner, it gives you absolute certainty in your belief. Nothing will shake that Iman, that faith that you have in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's now your sincerity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What's sincerity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Believe in Him, have absolute certainty in your heart, in Him, and in everything about Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Believe Him to be free of any defects, any deficiencies. Your nature as human beings is imperfection. His nature is perfection. His nature is perfection. By being divine and by being Lord, His nature is perfection. Never imagine that there's any restrictions on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When He deals with you, there's no limitations to what He can do for you, what He can give you. Ask whatever you want. Ask whatever you want. Ask beyond what you can imagine. Because whatever you ask, there's nothing that stops Him from giving. The only thing that stops Him from giving, and even that doesn't stop Him, He chooses not to, is you don't want to ask. And the only reason you don't ask is because you don't have conviction. You're not convinced when you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because there's nothing that He can't do for you. There's nothing that He can't do for you. If you're in the lowest of states, call upon Him. Call upon Him. أَمَّنْ يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ. Think about this ayah, and always think about this ayah. And when you pray to Him and you call upon Him, I just feel that you have need. I just feel that you're a beggar who is in absolute need of Him. Because He subhanahu wa ta'ala says, is He not the one who will answer the call of the one who's desperate? We don't ask through desperation. We ask because we just think we should ask. And we think, just lift up our hands, make a few du'as, and we're asking. They're not du'as. Ask when you're desperate about it. And that du'a will never be rejected. But when you're just putting up your hands and just make a du'a, we hope Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts despite ourselves. And He's Kareem. And He will accept. Despite our states, despite our hearts, despite our tongues, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will still accept. Because most of the times when we ask, we're not desperate. We're not desperate. We're not really asking Him. We just ask. But He'll still give. He'll still give. Despite us, He'll still give. But don't put limitations on what He subhanahu wa ta'ala can give you unless He's put the limitation. And not a limitation unless He said He's not going to do it. وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمُ ادْعُونِي أَسْتَجِيبْ لَكُمْ. Your Lord has said, ask me, I will answer you. Ask me, I will answer you. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ عَنْ عِبَادَتِي سَيَدْخُلُونَ جَهَنَّمَ دَاخِرِينَ. Those who are too arrogant to ask me from my worship, meaning making dua, those who are too arrogant to ask me, they will enter into paradise, into hellfire, humiliated. Those who feel too arrogant to ask Him. Don't put limitations on Him. Don't put limitations, because He's free of any deficiencies, and the only deficiencies are in our minds, and that's it. And when you worship Him, being sincere to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala means that you're sincere when you worship Him. You're sincere when you stand in front of Him. You're sincere in whatever you do. Because He told you, وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. Mukhlisin. They were only ordered to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hunafa, monotheists, believing in Him, sincerely. That's what we've been ordered to do. In everything that we do, be sincere to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by being sincere when we worship Him. And sincerity is that we only do it for Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. We've got no other motives, we've got no other reasons except for Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then being sincere to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nasiha lillahi ta'ala, obey Him in everything that He orders. Don't bring yourself into the discussion. Don't bring any human being into the discussion. The moment you realize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered you to do something, just submit to it completely. Don't ask questions. Doesn't matter whether you understand it or not. Don't ask questions. Just submit to it. Doesn't matter if you struggle with it. You're finding it hard. Don't ask questions. Just submit to it. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, it's not befitting, it's not right for a believing man and a believing woman, when Allah and His Messenger have decreed a matter, that they have a say in it. When Allah and His Messenger have said, you need to do something, you say, sam'an wa ta'a. So we hear and we obey. We hear and we obey. We accept whatever Allah and His Messenger have told us, and we completely obey. And if we have weaknesses within ourselves, we say, ghufranaka, ghufranak. We ask your forgiveness. And the believer, what's it? The second last ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah. آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كلنا آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله واليوم وكتبه ورسله لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله وقالوا, this is the nature of believers, سمعنا وأطعنا. We hear, we obey. We hear, we obey. But at the same time, we slip because we have weaknesses. So what then do you say? غفرانك. We ask your forgiveness. We ask your forgiveness. We hear, we obey. We try our best. We accept whatever comes from you subhanahu wa ta'ala, whatever comes from the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but we have weaknesses within us. And we keep on failing. So we ask your forgiveness. Because we know that we're going to fall short. We know we're going to fall short. We know we can never do enough for Allah and His Messenger. So we always ask. And that's the reason why. See, Surah Al-Baqarah is a surah of taqwa. If you want to become Surah Al-Baqarah, we're going to start, those who are attending that, we're going to start that tomorrow. What we understand from Surah Al-Baqarah, if you live Surah Al-Baqarah, you'll become from the greatest of believers. If you can live outwardly, you'll be from the greatest of believers. Because every single aspect of your religion is contained within Surah Al-Baqarah. Every single aspect of your religion is contained within Surah Al-Baqarah. But at the end, see, every single night it's sunnah. It's sunnah the Prophet to read the last 2 verses of Surah Al-Baqarah before going to sleep. Why is that? What's the wisdom behind it? What's the secret behind that? That's a dua to Allah subhanahu, recognition that all that's in Surah Al-Baqarah, if I can get myself in line with that, you'll be from the muttaqi, you'll be a man of God or a woman of God. But you know you can't do that. You know that you always fall short. So at the end of Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu is teaching you dua, asking Allah subhanahu, just don't burden me with more than what I can do. Accept whatever I do. Recognizing that I'm going to fall short. Recognizing that Surah Al-Baqarah, which is a microcosm of the whole of the Quran, I try my best, but I'm going to fall short. So I ask your forgiveness. I ask your forgiveness. And what's significant about that? Every single day you should live Surah Al-Baqarah. Surah Al-Baqarah. But at the end of every single day, you realize that you haven't lived Surah Al-Baqarah. So you end the night with the end of Surah Al-Baqarah. End the day with the end of Surah Al-Baqarah, which is what Allah subhanahu is just telling you to recognize. You all fall short. So just read these 2 last verses. Be sincere when you read them, and Allah subhanahu will forgive you for that day, for not living up to the standards of Surah Al-Baqarah. Live Surah Al-Baqarah, your life is sorted as a believer. But then recognize that it's not easy. The tawfiq is only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So read those last 2 verses every single night, then Allah subhanahu will accept your day. So try and bring yourself in line with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and try and be distant from any act that you know will upset Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And upset Allah subhanahu, even that word, any act that you'll know will upset Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu doesn't get upset. Allah subhanahu doesn't have human emotions. He's not angry as we're angry. He doesn't get upset. But when we say upset, it's a worrying statement. Because when Allah subhanahu gets upset, it means iradat al-intiqam. He subhanahu wa ta'ala will punish you. Punish you. If you get upset, our get out clause with that is that He's Rahim. He doesn't want to punish it, He's merciful. But try not to put yourself in any situation where there's a possibility He could unleash His wrath upon you. And the moment you realize you've done that, immediately turn back to and ask for His mercy to come down upon you. So that's some of the ideas about being sincere to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Any points up to that point before we look at being sincere to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So we look at the Quran. Yeah, sorry, Zafar.
Just going before we start that, you know when you talk about the companion meeting the Dajjal, and the Dajjal then sent, why does the Dajjal send him to Medina?
Why did the shaitan teach Abu Huraira Ayat al-Kursi as a protection every night? The Prophet said, Sadaqa al-Kadhub. That liar was truthful at that point. It tells you something that you can take wisdom from any place, even the worst of the jinn kingdom and the worst of the human kingdom. They helped. And there's one insight in that, is that whatever your source is, whatever it's taken from, wisdom and guidance can be taken from anywhere. He was the cause of Islam of a Sahabi. The Dajjal told him, go back and obey him. So he's the cause of Islam of Sayyidina Tim. He's the Dajjal, the Iblis he gives Abu Hurairah something. The Prophet confirmed that Ayat al-Kursi does that. So there's something within that. The worst of all of existence can still, Allah subhanahu can show you that I can give you something from whoever it is, even those whose nature is to misguide, whose nature is discretion. I can still pass the message through them. Allah subhanahu perhaps showing His qudra, His power. That the Dajjal in the end is what? He's a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Iblis is what? He's a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They have no power. The only reason they do their harm it's because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a dar. It's coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to see you and I, how we react to these things. Iblis can do nothing to a human being. The Dajjal can do nothing to the human being. It's only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do anything. Allahu Akbar.
So you know when the Dajjal mentioned that soon he'll be released.
Yeah.
What do they say that when, in terms of him being released? Is it after Mahdi comes, or do they say he's already been released and roaming around and
He's already released before that. There are some, Allahu Akbar, the validity of these, some not prophetic reports, but there are some reports that mention, non-prophetic reports, that mention that he's released, but he remains in hiding until the Prophet told him he only comes out at a point, ghadba, is something that angers him. And what angers him is the Mahdi. The time of saying Imam Mahdi, there will be peace and tranquility and calmness in the Muslim world. That's what I know is the Dajjal. And that's when he comes out and unleashes his destruction. But he'll be, that chaining, he'll be free from that, but he'll remain hidden until the time that Allah subhanahu decrees for him to come out.
So when people talk about this is a Dajjalic system, is that in preparation for his release, or him already doing things?
He may well be working in the background. He may well be. Allahu A'lam. He may well be. Allahu A'lam, we don't know. We can't say these things with yaqeen, but it makes a lot of sense if he was. Makes a lot of sense. I'll tell you. Anything else before we move on to this next point? Okay. Sincere advice to the Book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Before beginning this, I think our next session, which is in 3 weeks' time, we're going to have a session on Ramadan, because it'll be, I think, about 2-3 weeks before Ramadan starts. But also, Tahir is trying to arrange a session on the Quran within Ramadan, our relationship with the Quran in Ramadan. Because the importance of understanding, speaking about the Quran, is that Ramadan is not about fasting. Fasting is not the real issue in Ramadan. It's not about giving up your food and drink. That's a base level obligation. That's just like a low level obligation that you've got to do. Got to give up your food and drink. But that should be the easiest thing, even though now we're going to be panicking like 18, 19 hours. How am I going to survive fasting all day long? And we're all like trying to find ways around and get fatwas from the muftis. Like, can you make the fajr a bit later? And it's a bit too early now. We're all panicking about the length of the day. But if people understood what Ramadan's about, you'd wish that it was even longer than that. You'd wish that day and night. Like when the Prophet goes into the last 10 days of Ramadan, like our parties that we have every single night, iftar, our Eids every single night that we have, Prophet, he's forgot about eating. Because in the last 10 days, he doesn't have 2 meals. He doesn't have iftar and suhoor. He only has 1 meal. Why? Because he just now moves into another level of worship. The one who never stopped worship now moves on to another level of worship. To the point, like, how long does it take you to have a suhoor? How long does it take you to have suhoor? a sip of water, that's all. He hasn't got time to do that. What's that telling you? Prophet just non-stop worship in the last 10 days. What's he so nice to understand? It's not about food. It's not about food. It's not a month of food, giving up food or eating food at the end of every night. That's not what it's about. What's it about? It's a month of worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن. This month of Ramadan is the month in which Quran was revealed. You have to have a relationship with the Quran. And we should always just look and reflect, like, what's the success and failure of Ramadan? How can you gauge success and failure in Ramadan? The Prophet ﷺ told us about Ramadan, "Man haruma khayruha faqad haram." Whoever's deprived of the good of Ramadan is deprived. Deprived of what? Jannatullah ta'ala. Of any good. The ultimate good. If you can't get the good of Ramadan, then when can you get good? If you can't get to Allah subhanahu in the month of Ramadan, and all you've got to overcome is just your nafs, yourself, because there's no other distractions out there. No devil to blame for, I couldn't get up because he was talking to me again. He was telling me stay in bed, it's nice and warm, it's cozy, isn't it? That was you who's talking. So there's no iblis, no devil, no qareen, no companion devil, just you and yourself, and that's it. If you can't overcome yourself in Ramadan, you're never going to overcome yourself. You're never going to. So we need now to look at, how do you gauge whether your Ramadan is successful or not? Look at your Quran. Look at your Quran. How many khatams of Quran do you do in Ramadan? How many khatams of Quran do you do in Ramadan? If it's just, I come to Taraweeh and I listen to the Imam and that's it, that's not enough. It's not enough. You've got to move beyond that. You've got to move beyond that. That's there for the lowest of Muslims. You want to move a step beyond that. You can't keep on remaining at a low level. There's got to come a point where you just say, no, I need to move on. Alhamdulillah, Taraweeh is there. Alhamdulillah, we listen to the Quran. We don't understand it, doesn't matter. We don't understand it, doesn't matter. We're listening to the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether you understand or not, it's not the most important thing. You're listening to the Quran. But what about your own Quran? Everyone in this room must have a commitment to read a separate Quran from the Taraweeh in Ramadan. And those who are more proficient in Quran, those who can read it fluently, they should be even more committed. And those who want to take on to the next level, you should take time out in Ramadan. Take time out from your dunya. Right? People should take time out in Ramadan. Why? Because this is a month of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, month between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a month where you want to tie that relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can take out the whole month. And there are many in the Muslim world, they will do that. Ramadan is the month off. It's not Christmas, it's not Easter. Ramadan is the month off. Why? Connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So try and take time out as much as you can. As much as you can. For the purpose of what? Sit at home, read Quran. Those 7, 8, 9 hours you're at work and you're busy and you come back and you're fasting and you're tired and you can't, you're going to struggle to get a few hours in there. Even if you push yourself, and then to keep on going for the whole month, it's going to be hard. Take time out. Take time out. And then take time out to do what? Not come home and do nothing. Take time out. Sit there. Quran. Just constant Quran. Tie yourself to the book of Allah. In the month of Ramadan, you now have a connection to the Quran. Every single day, you're reading large portions of the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then once the month's over, you don't stop. You don't stop. You keep on going with it. So Ramadan's month in the Quran, inshallah, you're going to have, hopefully you'll have a session within the next few weeks, pushing you, motivating you about the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But here we're going to touch on a number of points around the Quran. What does it mean when the Prophet ﷺ said sincerity or sincere advice to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Lillahi wa li kitabihi. What does that mean? The first thing, you must have absolute yaqeen, absolute certainty in the Quran. It's the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every single word in there is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He revealed to the heart of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. إنه لتنزيل رب العالمين نزل به الروح الأمين على قلبك لتكون من المنذرين. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said this is a revelation from the Lord of all of existence. The Holy Spirit, Jibreel alayhi salam, is the one who brought it down. نزل به الروح الأمين على قلبك, to your heart, to the heart of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala etched into the words, are etched into the heart of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and from there it passes on. Like, think about transmission and connection. Jibreel brings it to the heart of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the purest of all hearts. And that heart was purified and created pure so that it becomes a vessel to carry the divine words. The heart of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What about our hearts? Because we hope to be part of the transmission. Our hearts are not pure. And maybe the level of purity dictates how much Quran we can carry within it. Maybe the level of purity, a heart that's full of sin, or a heart that's full of anger and greed and love of this world, love of wealth and love of materialism, vanity, arrogance. The words of Allah can't stay in there. A foulness that you carry within your heart, you have to clean it out for the book of Allah to be within the heart, because it descended on the purest of all hearts. The purest of all hearts. And it was then given out to pure hearts. But then it moves on, and the hearts were not as pure. And now, with the time, 1400 years later, hearts are not pure. But you want the book of Allah to nestle into your heart. Nestle into your heart. There has to be some purity within the heart. Quran, you want to be connected to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet said, Inna Allah la yu'adhibu qalban wa'al Quran. Wa'al Quran. Interesting word he used. Allah will not punish a heart. Wa'al Quran. Literally, or no, you can take as that understands the Quran or that memorizes the Quran. Allah will not punish that heart. But there's another wa'a, the verb wa'a that the Prophet used. There's another word that's connected to that, which is wi'a. Wi'a is a container. A container. A heart that has become a container for the Quran, Allah will not punish that heart. A heart that carries the Quran. So Allah subhanahu revealed that Quran reflects His speech. It's His speech. He revealed it to the purest of all hearts. Have belief, absolute belief in every single word, every single letter that's within the Quran. This is words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Jibreel alayhi salam revealed it, carried it to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was the messenger of God sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Every single word came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Jibreel to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We're now receiving. We sit down and we read the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We sit down and read the Quran. Whenever you sit and read the Quran, just remember it came from Jibreel to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was carried by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. نزل به الروح الأمين. الروح الأمين. The trustworthy spirit. The trustworthy spirit. Jibreel alayhi salam, to whom? To the purest of all hearts. على قلبك, to your heart. And here you are now reading it. Here you are now reading it. Have absolute certainty that it came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, onto the heart of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And have absolute certainty that the Quran, whatever people want to tell you, study the Quran, learn the Quran. MashaAllah, may Allah bless Zubair. Say Ameen, everybody. May Allah bless Zubair. He's done something. I was so happy when he came, because one of my passions, a personal passion, is just the Quran. One of the reasons why is because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Man ahabba al-Qur'an falyubshir. Whoever loves the Quran should take glad tidings. Having that connection to the book of Allah subhanahu special. And for a while I've been looking for anybody, let's sit down and just speak about the Quran. Whatever understanding we take from our shaykh. Whatever understanding, let's just speak about the Quran. There's nothing greater you can speak about other than the words of Allah subhanahu. And Zubayr was the means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down. Zubayr was the means, may Allah subhanahu bless him and raise him for that. Because it's something that I've been looking for a while. But because of that, now we can sit down and look at the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And whatever Allah subhanahu gives. But the more and more you read it, and the more and more you study it, it just increases your faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It increases your faith in Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It increases your faith in the Quran. Because as you study from the eyes of the ulama who received that knowledge from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, just your connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the messenger and the book of Allah, just becomes so much more stronger. When you study the Quran, there's no way that could have been human speech. Absolutely impossible it could have been the words of the Prophet. Absolutely impossible. It just, the more and more you study, just increases your levels of certainty in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and increases your levels of certainty in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Your levels of certainty in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We're going to read this tomorrow. We'll just mention it now. ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. I have absolutely no doubt about this book. That's an amazing statement to begin the Quran with. Because we've spoken about this last week. A guidance, or we're asking Allah to give us guidance. Allah subhanahu then begins by saying, Alif Lam Mim. Alif Lam Mim. What's that mean? No idea. No idea. What's Alif Lam Mim? We have no idea. Prophet knew what it meant. Didn't tell us. Speculate about what it meant, but ultimately say, we have no idea what Alif Lam Mim means. But we believe in it. We have absolute belief in it. Because every single word and every single letter in the Quran came to the heart of the Prophet from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So after telling you 3 letters about which you're going to be told, we have no idea what it means, then he's going to tell you this is the book and there's absolutely no doubt in it. There's absolutely no doubt in this book. You ask for guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim. Then you're given 3 letters. You're told, there's no way you can understand what this means. What's that? What's that about? Why has he done that? To test you now. Are you serious when you ask for guidance? Or are you looking for guidance from your intellect? As one of our teachers, he said, if everything in our religion made sense to our minds, then our submission is to our intellect and not to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins the revelation with something where you just got to submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say, I haven't got a clue what this means, but I accept it because it came from you. And then what are you told? This is the book about which there's absolutely no doubt. And as you start going through the book, then you start understanding something about why is there no doubt? Hudan lil muttaqeen. Then start reading the Quran and studying the Quran. Then you go back to the beginning. Now understand why he said there's no doubt. Because as I move through the Quran, absolute certainty, this couldn't have come from the Prophet. There's no way, however great his rank is, and he is the greatest, the most perfect, the most complete human being, there's no way that he could have produced it. There's no way he could have produced it. And time again, the Quran will keep on telling you that this is not from him. This is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you study the Quran, it just increases your certainty. Those who are distant from the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who may not read it, perhaps they don't know how to read it properly. And if they do, they may not read it a lot. And if they do, they don't understand it. So the more and more steps away you are, your certainty in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the Quran, in the Messenger will not be as strong. You have to have that connection to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In every single aspect, you have to have that connection to the Quran. If you don't, the Quran is one of the barometers, the gauge to see your iman. Your iman. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you can't see, you can't, or in this world you can't see, you can't touch, you can't hear, you can't, he's not tangible that you can feel like that. That's not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But he sent you something that you can relate to. He sent you a messenger from him subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he sent you words from him subhanahu wa ta'ala. You want to connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have to connect to these two. You have to connect to these two. You want to know your connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the messenger, look at your connection to the Quran and look at the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the words of the messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That tells you where your iman is. That tells you where your faith is. And if you're remote and cut off from these and you're connected to other things, then it tells you where your heart is. So we need that connection. The book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Believe in it. And believe the other aspect. It says there, the seal of all of them. You must have certainty in your heart. Quran. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is Khatam al-Nabiyyin. Khatam al-Nabiyyin. And you have absolute certainty in that. We have absolute certainty in that. Why? Because the Quran has told us that. ما كان محمد أبا أحد من رجالكم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told you in one of the only 4 places in the Quran where the name of the Prophet is mentioned. Only 4 places in the Quran the name of the Prophet is mentioned. One of those 4 places Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, he sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not the father of any of your men. Meaning what? None of his sons outlived him. They all died in their infancy. Who outlived him? His daughters. And in fact only one, Sayyidah Fatima. All of his children died whilst he was alive. All of his children passed away whilst he was alive. And it's something about the Prophet that every single one of his children, he was the one who had to bury them. Every single one of his children. He sliced them with his own hands, he buried them. Except for Sayyidah Fatima. Because that's the one through whom his lineage is maintained. Through his daughter Sayyidah Fatima. But he's not the father of any one of your men. وَلَكِنْ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ وَخَاتَمَ النَّبِيِّينَ. He's Rasulullah and he's Khatam al-Nabiyyin. He closes off all of the prophets. La nabiyya ba'di. There's no prophet that will ever come after me. That's our belief, absolute certainty. The same with the Quran. There's no message. If there's no prophet coming, there's no message coming. If there's no prophet coming, there's no message coming. When, what was it, 9 days or a week, the last Quran that Jibreel alayhi salam brought down to the Prophet ﷺ was revealed to him 9 days before he ﷺ passed away. 9 days before he ﷺ. 23 years has spanned the revelation. 9 days before he ﷺ passed away, Jibreel alayhi salam came down to the Prophet with the very last ayah that was revealed to him. وَاتَّقُوا يَوْمًا تُرْجَعُونَ فِيهِ إِلَى اللَّهِ. Beware of a day when you're all going to be returned back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then everyone will be repaid for what he's done, and no injustice. No injustice will take place. The very last words in the Quran should think about this. وَهُمْ لَا يُظْلَمُونَ. No injustice on the Day of Judgment. And then what happens with that? Just a week later, he passes away. No messenger, no Quran, no revelation. That's it, it's all finished now. It's all finished. The Quran, he came to complete all the prophets. And he brought a revelation that completed all the books. All the books, all revelation that came. According to some reports, it mentions 104, I think it was 104 scriptures that were revealed to humanity. So I think it was 104. 104 books that were revealed to humanity that carried revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We only know of a handful of them. We know the Zabur, we know of the Torah, we know the Injil, we know the Suhafi Ibrahim, that Ibrahim received some scrolls. We know about some, but we don't know about all of this 104 books that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to a set number of prophets and messengers. We don't know about them. But what we know, everything is contained within the Quran. All the messages of all the messages of all of the prophets that ever went before, all of the prophets, everything you find in the Torah, in the Zabur, in the Injil, and every other message that came, it's all in the Quran. It's all in the Quran. There's a hadith, and we're going to mention this tomorrow in the class tomorrow, where the Prophet, I think it's in the Musnad Imam Ahmed, the Prophet mentioned the first 7 surahs, the 7 long surahs. He said, I've received them in place of the Torah. He said, then he referred to another set, which is, I think it's the next 10 spara of the Quran, 10 juz of the Quran, where he said, he termed them al-mi'un, the surahs of 100 verses in length. He said, I've been given these in place of the Zabur, the Psalms. And he said, then surahs called al-mathani, which is from, I think it's from Surah al-Shu'ara, Surah al-Naml, the 19th and 20th spara of the Quran, up to Surah al-Fusra, which is in the 26th spara of the Quran. He said, I've been given this in place of the Injil. And he said, the last part, he said, I've been given this alone. Nobody else has been given it. But what does that tell you? Passages of Quran contain within them meanings of previous revelation. Meanings of previous... Everything you could have had. If you had access to the original Torah, you're not allowed to look at it. Prophet told Sayyidina Umar, put it away. He was reading a few pages of the Torah. Original revelation. Not the altered form. The Prophet, when he saw it, he got angry with him. And he said, if Musa was alive, he could not have done anything except for follow me. He could not have done anything except for follow me. Torah no longer applied. Zabur no longer, Injil no longer applies. The only thing that applies is Quran. And everything that could have been found in the Torah and the Zabur and the Injil, it's in the Quran. Everything that we need. Everything that we need from the time of the Prophet until the last days of humanity before the Quran is lifted, everything is there. It just needs us to go to the Quran and look for what we're finding. Then it says to recite and memorize the Quran. To recite and memorize the Quran. We'll stop at this point because there's a lot of discussion that we need to have around the Quran. And now this is about our nasiha, being sincere to the Quran is about our relationship to the Quran. How is our relationship? Being sincere to Allah is about our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We need to look at our relationship with the Quran. And inshallah, in our next session, which will now be after Ramadan. Because the next session we have in 3 weeks' time, I think we're going to do a session on Ramadan. We're going to recap what we spoke about last year about Ramadan, go over rules of fasting. And so the first session after Ramadan will continue, which may be good because even we have some himmah, we have some aspirations. We're going to open the Quran, we're going to get our Khatm al-Quran done, then we'll close the book, and then we won't see for another year. So it's good that we just have this session again after Ramadan, just to push people, don't close the book, keep on reading. There's a wisdom behind the sunnah of the Prophet. And whenever you finish the Quran, it's sunnah to start it again. You always do that. Whenever you finish the Quran, you do khatam, you always read the first 5 verses of Surah Al-Baqarah to tell you what? You didn't finish. You keep on going. You never stop. Al-halul murtahil. The Prophet, he mentioned the best of acts is the one who stops and he descends and then he moves on. They asked him what's meant by that. Descends. Al-hal al-murtahil means he gets off his ride and then he gets back on and he rides on. So they asked him what was meant by that. He said somebody, when it comes to the end of the Quran, he starts again. He starts again. But what's that telling you? You never stop in your journey with the Quran. You never stop. The fact you read the first 5 verses of Surah Al-Baqarah is telling you, I've started now, I've got to carry on. I've got to carry on. So we're going to do that after Ramadan. We'll look at our relationship with the Book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wallahu a'lam, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Any questions about that? Yeah.
So, there's different ways of sort of getting from the Quran, reciting, memorizing, understanding, the various ways. But in Ramadan, would you say just read? Or
Read.
everything?
Read. Just read. Ramadan is read. Once you get out of Ramadan, that's reflection, and Ramadan is just read as much as you can. No. Yeah.
Normally, when we talk about memorizing or technology or reading something, always use brain. But everywhere in our own religion, it's been said by heart.
Yeah.
Memorized by heart.
Yeah.
It's on the heart.
Yeah.
Can you just enlighten that difference between heart and brain?
Brain is about understanding. That's the aql. The brain is about understanding. But the first, in our religion, in Islam, the first thing is to have that connection to the Messenger, connection to that source. And we do that by memorizing, by taking on board the words of Allah, the words of the Prophet. So, and then once we have that connection, then we can start looking at understanding. So the first thing is that connection. So we see in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the ayat of the Quran. He said it's in the hearts of human beings, the people of knowledge. And it has to be deposited there, it has to be put into the heart. And once it's there, then the aql, which is a nur, it's not the ability to understand is a gift of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a gift of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you want to have that understanding guided by the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now that you carry within you the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you can start looking at what these words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are speaking about. And that's a greater rank. If you can't memorize, and people will have difficulty, people are different in their abilities, take whatever you can, because the ability to memorize is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The ability to understand is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You take whatever portion Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you. People are different in all of that. But beyond that is something else. It's not about memorizing, it's not about understanding, it's about embodying. We want to become people of the Quran in a real sense. The Hafiz of the Quran in a real sense is not somebody who memorizes the words. He memorizes hifz, protects and preserves. He becomes the Quran within him. You look at him, you see Quran within him. You don't need to listen to him reciting. He's like the Prophet, a motion, Quran in motion. You look at him and see, that's what that ayah meant. That's our real goal in life, that you want to become a Quran. Wallahu a'lam. It's a high maqam, it's a very high rank, but like we said before, ask and there's no limits. There's no limits. There's no limit where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can put you. Wallahu a'lam. Okay, Tahir? Alhamdulillah. Khatms of Quran in Ramadan, inshallah. Good man.
Shaykh, you mentioned the last 2 ayats of Surah Al-Baqarah.
Some narrations mention the last three. Some narration mention the last three, but other narrations mention the last two. Better to do last three.
Last 3 ayahs.
Last three. From Lillahi ma fi samawati ma fil ard. That's better. Yeah. Some hadith mention last two, some hadith mention last three. Safer to do the last three. Wallahu a'lam. طيب, we'll finish with that. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.